So I'm going to be breaking down a sample and going over each layer and how and why I made what I made. It's a sample that could very much be flipped in the style of Don Toliver, Travis Scott, even Ye or Yeet. Quite a versatile sample, but again, it's focused on those dark textured elements. So I'm going to break down the sample, go through each layer and explain what I did, how I did it, and why I did it. Now, I use this preset called Schema. It's from Keon's Multi-Keys 4 Analog Lab Bank. There's a lot of great sounds in this, and multi-keys are one of my favorite things to use. This is the pattern that I played. And I added the Cymatics Origin plugin. This is a free plugin. I'd highly recommend it. It just helps you get that kind of vintagey sound. It has some vinyl tape texture to it, and you can also kind of distort, detune. It's just a great plugin. I'd definitely recommend it. I've been using it more and more recently. I also just added a bit of compression, some multi-band compression, a bit of halftime, and some more compression. And I did this so that it would be a very bold sound, as this is one of the main key sounds in this sample. Now, the next sound is this texture that I got from Phantom 808's recent multi-kit. I've been going through his kit a bunch recently. There's a lot of great sounds, so I'd highly recommend checking it out. And it's just this texture called Starlight. What I did is just pitched it up 4 semitones so that it matched the sample. I added some compression. I added some stock delay from Logic and just a bit of EQ. And the next layer I added was kind of a counter sound to what I already had, and it helped add some percussive element to it. And this is a phrase also from Phantom's Cremona multi-kit, and it's just kind of a bell drum texture that I had chopped up a little bit, reversed a couple parts, and all I really did was added some compression. The EQ isn't really doing anything in this. Now this next layer is just from a synth that I played in later in the sample, and I think I just chopped up like a little portion of it and added it because I liked the texture, the kind of drone ambience that it gave, and this is what it sounds like. So it's really just kind of ear candy and just something that adds to the overall atmosphere of this sample. And then I've just got this other small little ear candy texture that I added, and it's just this kind of like shuttery tremolo type texture, which I believe I got from an Analog Lab or Diva preset. I can't quite remember. So when played together with the synth, it sounds like this. And this texture that I added is something that I really like because it's so subtle, but it adds such a human element. And that was recording my own voice just to get some little breath sounds. Now, I think initially I had tried to record a proper vocal take and a vocal line and melody, and I ended up only chopping the little breath bits that I was like, and you'll hear it here, and it just adds, again, this nice kind of human ambience to the sample. And yet again, I've used Phantom. I swear, this is just a plug for Phantom. He is an amazing sample maker though. But I took one of his drum loops from his sample pack, Cremona, and I chopped it up a bunch. I time stretched it so it fit the sample, and I had it come in before the next bar because it comes at an unexpected moment, but it instantly kind of just like grabs you, and then you just start driving, like so to say. It adds rhythmic drive. Understanding how to use percussion and drum elements in samples without being overpowering, again keeping in mind that you're going to have a producer add a full beat to it most likely, is really kind of a skill and something worth doing, because it can help give an idea of what the kind of rhythm for the sample is, and it just gives it more drive. So then when you add or layer a proper beat over it, it just has a lot more sort of drive to it. And I know I keep using that word, but it's really what it's for. Now in this next section, I took that same bassy texture that was the kind of main layer of this sample, and all I did was just focus more on the highs of it. So here you'll hear that it sounds very similar to the first section, but it just kind of again transitions to more of a high-end focus, and this just helps lighten things and bring the sample to a new place as it progresses. I only chopped it a little bit with some small spaces just so that the other elements could shine through and just give more of a cool textured chopped feel to the sample. Now this section pretty much uses a lot of the same layers from the first section, except for two things. I simply took the breaths that I recorded with my voice and again just focused more on the high end of it and just with a couple chops. And then I also took yet another, I think honestly it was just like my go-to kit when I was making this sample. I used one of Phantom's percussive loops and it sounds like this. And I simply sound shifted it or pitched it so that it fit the sample. I just always assume that drum textures are in C minor, so I just pitch up and down accordingly, and I added a little bit of halftime. I always love using halftime on my drum textures, my percussive elements, and just simply bringing the low end up a bit. And then I added some of this DH flanger. I believe this is a free plugin I'd highly recommend checking out. I also love this just for the sake of width really, and a bit of that flangery plane effect that you get, and just some EQ to cut out a lot of the highs, a lot of the lows, and just keep it as a very thin kind of textural element that can sit in the sample. And again, now we continue with that main drum backbeat that I chopped up. As you can see, I chopped the drums and made space for where that distorted bell sound comes in. It's just this kind of Now, I actually took a sound here from my upcoming texture kit, Mirage, and this will be out soon. Now, for the next section, I introduced this synth that I played in myself. This was using a Diva preset. Now you can see I added some compression, I added some Valhalla supermassive reverb. This is one of my go-to reverbs. It's a free plugin as well, so definitely check it out. I used some Pancake just to pan the synth, and I use this fourth shape pan preset in Portal. I use this one a lot just to give it a kind of quarter note chop feel. Again, something you'd hear in a lot of kind of older vinyl type records. It just gives it that vintage vibe. And the synth preset was called PD Sunset Dreams. It's from Tom Wolfe's Atlantis library. Definitely check out Diva. I think it's well worth the investment. The synth sounds that you get in this are such high quality, and there's a lot of room for sound design in creating your own sounds within this. And this is the Too Easy synth bass from Kavi's Confessions to Analog Lab Bank. And next I used Omnisphere for this sort of droney bell sound. It's called Gamelan Drops, and all I did was EQ, and I added this plugin called Emergence, which kind of replicates a lot of guitar pedal sounds. So definitely check it out. I think it's free as well, and it sounds like this. Now, with the bell texture that I took from Omnisphere, I pitched it up an octave. I added halftime, which then kind of brought it back down and gave it a darker, sort of more low-end texture to the sound. And I added that Cymatics Origin, again for a more kind of vinyl, vintagey sound. I added some EQ, multi-band compressor, a bit more EQ to polish up some of the notes that I just found unfavorable, just some of the harsher frequencies, and I added some RC20 and a bit more EQ. Now, in this next section, I introduce this piano, and it's from Scorch. It's the Nostalgia preset from Scorch in the piano and keys section. And these are the notes I played, super, super simple. And I added some compression, I added some RC20, some more delay, I added the cymatics origin, I added halftime, which definitely gave it that low-end focused texture. Again, I recommend using halftime, but like adjusting the mix and not just putting the full wet mix on. You can get some really cool sounds from it. Added some portal and some tape delay. And for the next section, it just transitions into the piano being like an octave higher, and it sounds like this. And in my samples, I really like to have sections like this where it's kind of a C section or a bridge section, just so there's some variation from the main melody. Just having an interesting counter melody that takes the listener or producer somewhere else, gives them more ideas, options to flip in their own beats, and then come back to the main section. And one more thing I really want to stress the importance of is actually not quantizing everything. In fact, now I almost never quantize anything that I play. I always love integrating that human feel, even if I've clicked it in and drawn it myself and I haven't actually recorded it from my own playing. Just adjusting the notes so they're slightly off the grid, especially with basses. That's something I found really took the quality and just definition of my samples to another level, was not having everything so perfectly on the grid. And then this section, I've just stripped out a lot of layers, so it just has room to breathe, and that's really important to do in your samples. This is the outro section where I just added some halftime to the layer that just kind of gives it this slowed down feeling that, okay, now we're at the end. It's really easy to just take a whole section of your sample and copy and paste it and then just add halftime to that entire section. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it's just an easy way to get kind of a version B or second version of a section without doing too much. Halftime, as I'm sure we all know, is probably one of the most profound plugins as a sample maker, in my opinion, especially within the dark trap kind of hip hop that we like to make, that I like to make. And yeah, it's just another thing to try out. And lastly, on the master channel, what I did was pitch the sample down one semitone and I just detuned it slightly. As you can see, it says -9 cents. I added some compression, very light compression, and mostly just for the color of the compressor, the sound of the compressor. I really like this compressor, and it's just a stock one from Logic. It's my go-to compression, so I really like adding it. I added some of the TR5 Classic Clipper, so this was just to make it louder, a bit more distorted. I added a little bit of EQ just to cut out some of the lows and just kind of push down on some of the more muddy frequencies that I found in the sample. And then I added the ARTG mastering plugin. This is just a preset that I made and I love this plugin. Shout out to Trust Me Lucian or Oscar. He's the one who put me onto this plugin and I love this. especially for mastering. It just really helps glue the whole sample together, all the sounds together, and not doing too much, just boosting some of the lows, some of the highs, and making it a bit more wide so you can see in the spreader section. And then last but not least, I use the stock limiter from Logic. I really like this limiter, and I don't think I even really boosted the gain, but I just made sure that the output level was at minus 0.2, just so I knew that the sample wasn't going to clip. Now again, this is a sample that could be flipped in so many different ways and work for so many different artists, but overall it has that dark, textured, aggressive sound that I love to make in my samples. And hopefully you learned something from this. If you have any questions or suggestions for video ideas, please let me know. You can find all my sound kits and my sample packs on my website in the description. Until then, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.